Hello, everyone, and welcome to part three of the series on just issues with Russia and its tying back to the United States and how we can all support each other. Today's presentation is particularly on the withdrawal of US aid from Russia, which marked a turning point for civil society organizations, particularly those serving LGBTQ plus communities. This conversation is examining the multifaceted impact of the withdrawal, from the immediate financial crisis to the long-term ideological victory represented for the Kremlin. We're exploring how organizations like Coming Out have adapted to provide essential services in an increasing hostile legal environment, safety measures required to continue this work, and the broader implications for both service providers and recipients. Our fantastic facilitator today is Ksenia. She's an attorney with 21 years of experience working in Russia and 12 years working with public interest law and LGBTQ plus rights. Thank you so much for being here, Ksenia. Looking forward to hearing all the important work you're doing.
Well, hi to everybody. You already know that I'm Ksenia Mikhailova and I'm attorney, so I don't know what else can I tell you about myself. So I will begin with my speech for today. When we talk about human rights work and authoritarian conditions, we usually focus on outcomes like cases documented, people assisted, laws challenged, lives saved or allocated. Much less often do we talk about infrastructures. Not organizations or offices, but the invisible systems that make human rights work possible at all. Legal cover, financial routes, standards of accountability adapted to repression, and external points of legitimacy that allow this work to exist beyond national borders. These systems rarely attract attention while they function. They become visible only when they begin to erode. Russia in 2024 offers a clear example of what happens when human rights infrastructure is dismantled gradually, layer by layer, until a single remaining element carries disproportionate weight. By spring 2024, the human rights environment in Russia had reached a stable but extreme configuration. Human rights work still existed, but no longer as a legal activity, no longer as public practice, no longer as a sustainable sector. For LGBTQ plus related work, the situation was even more explicit. There was no longer a legal category of LGBTQ plus people entitled to protection. Instead, there was an officially designated extremist movement. This single legal shift had cascading consequences. Participation became a criminal risk, donations became criminal evidence, visibility became self-incrimination, assistance became support of extremism. And yet, work continued. Not because organizations were particularly brave, but because the people on the ground, there was no alternative infrastructure. Let me give one very ordinary example of the mere beginning of this situation. We were involved in a legal case challenging the refusal to update a gender marker in a university diploma. The diploma had been issued by a religious university, which argued that changing the document would contradict religious doctrine. This was a standard legal dispute. It was handled by a licensed lawyer, followed procedural rules, and was covered by the media as a routine equality case. After the designation of the LGBT movement as extremist, the situation changed overnight. Continuing to represent the case now carried a risk of being interpreted as participation in extremist activity for the lawyer. For the beneficiary, it created a risk of being formally identified as connected to an extremist organization. There was no court decision on the merits. The case was simply terminated. Nothing about the facts changed, only the legal meaning of normal professional action did. The point here is not activism, it's the criminalization of normal life. By the time youth aid existed, excited, the sector was already operating under severe constraints. Foreign agent legislation had been eliminated domestic fundraising. Public reporting had become legally dangerous. Financial transparency, normally virtue, had turned into a liability. For LGBTQ plus organizations, criminalization added another layer. Money itself became an evidence. In this environment, external support served multiple functions at once. Western support and USA support in particular provided financial resources, of course, standards and procedures adapted to repressions, a shared language for explaining why full transparency was impossible, and an external source of legitimacy. USAID-funded programs were not simply grants. They were embedded in secure, predictable, and institutionally protected channels. A second example is less personal and more technical. Standard donor reporting usually requires the identification of the final beneficiary, names, location, sometimes even documentation. In the Russian context, this requirement can translate directly into criminal liability. With donors managing large USAID-funded programs, this risk was explicitly understood. There was a shared recognition that naming the end beneficiaries would expose them and those assisting them to prosecution. As a result, reporting frameworks were adapted. The absence of identifying information was not treated as a compliance failure, but as a security necessity. This was not an exception or loophole. It was a negotiated, institutionalized standard designed for work under repression. This distinction matters because what disappears later is not just funding, it is this route. The exit of USAID did not occur in isolation. It coincided with a broader rightward shift in USA politics and increased fatigue from war in Europe. Together, these developments marked a structural turning point. First, the obvious effect, reduced funding. Yes, there is less money. That part is clear and requires no elaboration. Second, the loss of secure financial infrastructure. This is far more consequential. Previously, many funding flows were legally defensible, politically explainable, and institutionally protected. After USAID's exit, organizations faced a dual risk, finding new sources of funding, of course, while simultaneously inventing new secure ways to move resources. At the same time, they were required to explain to donors why reporting is partial, why transparency is limited, and standard compliance models do not function under repression. This is not a comfortable conversation and often not a successful one. So let me give an example that illustrates the security dimension of funding rather than a direct casual link. Recently, a major pro-government media outlet conducted an investigation after gaining access through phishing to the email servers of several international donors. What they extracted were names of specific individuals working inside Russia, people who had appeared in correspondence related to grants and project implementation. Importantly, these were not USAID itself and not USAID operators. And the data they obtained are mostly dated back to 2022, before LGBTQ plus related work was formally criminalized as extremist. So no, this didn't immediately lead to mass persecution. But this is not the point. The point is that once identifying data exists, even from an earlier formally legal period, it becomes a permanent liability. Legal context changes faster than data disappears. What previously counted as a routine professional communication can later be retroactively reframed as evidence. This is why secure funding infrastructure is not about intent or trust. It's about minimizing what can be later be weaponized. And thought about what I have to mention is the ideological signal. Beyond logistics, USA's exit carried symbolic weight. The withdrawal of state-based support alongside the retreat of corporations and platforms was read as an ideological signal, not by civil society, but by authoritarian governments. Silence and absence are interpreted as repositioning. This shift strengthened existing state narratives, Russian state narratives. Russian authorities gained a coherent story. The United States authorities has reconsidered its priorities and answered to demands of USA people. Corrupted by same-sex marriages, Europe is isolated. LGBTQ plus rights are framed as an abandoned Western experiment. Russia positioned itself as the defender of ordinary people against corrupt elites. This narrative directly legitimizes harsh repression and broader social hostility. One of the most corrosive consequences was internal. As external support weakens, a narrative takes hold. NGOs as dependent, NGOs as ideologically hollow, NGOs as fundamentally unsustainable. This withdrawal of support becomes proof of illegitimacy. So let me describe a pattern that has become increasingly common inside organizations after the after the spring of 2024. An organization loses a major external funding source. Not overnight collapse, just gradual contraction. At some point, internal discussions shift. They are no longer about strategy or impact, but about legitimacy. Staff begin to ask questions like, are we still credible if donors are leaning? Are we doing something wrong? Are we become irrelevant? This uncertainty often turns inward. Decisions that were previously understood as security measures, limited transparency, informal structures, personal risk-taking, start to be reframed internally as ethical failures. Conflicts emerge around accountability that is no longer possible. People accuse each other not of incompetence, but of moral compromise. From the outside, this can look like a scandal. From the inside, it's often a crisis of meaning. The organization is not destroyed by repression alone. It begins to erode from the question, if support is withdrawn, were we ever legitimate to begin with? This does not destroy structures first. It erodes motivation, self-perception, and long-term resilience. Taken together, these developments show that the issue is not simply financial. What is at stake is security, legitimacy, ideological balance, and the survival of a space where people can still make choices. If this moment is framed only as funding problem, the response will be not adequate, because vacuums in this field are never neutral; they are filled deliberately quickly. So I'm close to the end of my speech. So now I'll be very concrete. For example, after violent attacks, LGBTQ plus people increasingly cannot access to legal or psychological assistance. Not because such professionals don't exist, not because they don't have enough money, but because independent lawyers and psychologists are afraid to being linked to an extremist organization. In practice, this means that the only specialists willing to work are those already connected to NGOs, formally designed as extremists.
Oh, Ksenia, I think you cut out for just a little bit. Can you try saying something again? And then we're going to have to back up just a little bit. Can you try saying something again? Because I think the internet connection went down.
1, 2, 3.
Yes, we're good. Okay, so can you go back to the point about being linked to an extremist organization, and then around that point is
Yeah,
where it cut
yeah.
out.
Yeah, so the specialists are afraid to be connected to extremist NGOs and refuse to provide assistance to LGBTQ plus people. So in practice, the only specialists are willing to work with LGBTQ plus who are already connected to LGBTQ plus NGOs, which are designated as extremists. So these organizations still provide lawyers who know how to act without exposing themselves to persecution, psychologists trained to work under criminalization, and they have materials that explain how assistance can be provided without creating legal risk for the specialist. So the infrastructure, the grassroots infrastructure, the infrastructure in the field is still there, but there are now 3 times fewer specialists. The path of funding to them is 3 times longer, and every step costs more legally, financially, and personally. So that's the current reality. Thank you. I finished.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And then, of course, the work that you are doing. I think it's important to highlight, specifically as we're talking about the USA withdrawal, that, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, from what I gathered from your presentation, that this wasn't just an organization that was providing that financial support. They were also the neutral third party that also allowed specific beneficiaries to go through and provide support without having that name tied to them. So they're not risking persecution. So the withdrawal from USAID isn't just about this entity that is doing X, Y, and Z, but they are really were that neutral support that allowed more work to be done. And this is the importance of having that international support now more than ever with the US aid being out, that people just can't donate internally. Because I think that that's one of the conversations that comes up a lot of how can we fund this group over there when we have people in our own backyard that are struggling. And this is why it's so important, because just because it's not necessarily in your backyard, you're not necessarily having that ability to provide that support in country and needing that external support, but also because, again, of the global community, because this could so easily be, just because it's Russia today doesn't mean that it can't be the US tomorrow. And the further politically that things are going in that direction, this can so easily become the US tomorrow. Did I get all of that correct with the USAID and the importance of the international donations?
Yes, you're absolutely right, because the international donation and is a part of the support system, not only as like money, but of course it's very important as as free money, which are not which are much less risky for people in Russia. But yes, it shows the society support, and it's a signal for the countries of those people who where they, those people, those donors live in. And I can provide one more example. A few months ago, I spoke with some people from OSCE Europe about possibility of initiate so-called Moscow mechanism.
Unfortunately, you're cutting in and out again. Can you give the example from the beginning again? Sorry, you're cutting.
Okay,
Internet connection issue. Yes.
a few months ago, I spoke to some people from OSCE, the Organization of Security in Europe, about possibility to initiate the
Oh no, it's starting again. I and I hate to do this because it's so lovely to see your face, but would you be able to go off camera just to give this example for because I really want to make sure that people understand this. And then you can go back on.
Okay, so let's do it like this. uh, now I see that I have some connection issues. Now I don't have the issues. Okay, so a few months ago, I spoke with some people from OSCE, the Organization of Security in Europe, about the possibility to initiate a so-called Moscow mechanism of OSCE in connection with repression against LGBTQ plus people in Russia. And they told uh, that it's obvious that because USA left the field, so politically is not a good time for Europe to support. I think in spring of 2025, but I raised this question again in the autumn of 2025 with the same people, and just because I always am doing something and doing after I get the result. But they said that, okay, let's try to, because there is a situation that people in some countries, concrete countries in Europe, they support the LGBT plus community, and they understand that the situation in Russia endangers to also to their countries, and maybe maybe the authorities, the diplomats from those countries, will support the initiatives. So it shows the I think this is a direct effect of this international solidarity on the level of usual people. And if it's
Oh, I think you're still having connection issues. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing
okay,
what you're saying because it's dropping out. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting the highlight. There are some countries in Europe that you were originally approaching to get support, and they weren't on board. But then they became on board as they started to see things progressing. Did I surmise that example because there were a lot of dropouts with the connection, and I just want to make sure that um, the the material is still there for the example. Did I surmise that correctly?
yes, in the beginning they wasn't on board because they didn't see the support from USA because the politics of USA changed. But in few months, their position changed because they saw the position of the society inside of their societies inside. So they decided that it will be more diplomat costs. It will be less diplomatic costs that they say something against USA than not support the position of their own people. What this is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you so much because even with connection issues, I knew it was super, super important that what you were saying is highlighted because yes, the global political landscape is super important for that diplomacy. But again, from what you're saying, they maybe not weren't necessarily on board initially. but seeing the direction of things in their own country, then started to get that buy-in of, oh, this is really, really important. And again, that solidarity. So I'm really glad that you were able to get that example. Potentially, you can come on camera again because I really want to see your face, and hopefully, we can still have those connection issues if we need to go off again to make sure that the point is still there. Then we can do that. I think it's really also important to talk about that this isn't just a financial issue, but that this is about security and legitimacy. And that's something that I think can be taken for granted of, for employees, you show up and it's, that camaraderie and we're all in this together. But once you start losing that funding and starting to question not only your work as a collective, but internally, well, why am I doing this when there is such security risks? And I'm really glad that you highlighted that and that people are still doing this work, even though there are 3 times fewer specialists and it's taking 3 times longer. And that's the importance of getting the external funding from the global community. Because how many people are coming to you each day, each week, each month saying, I need support?
Okay, I can speak about very concrete figures concerning the programs I am involved in. At the moment, let me see. I will tell you the exact figure.
I love
Wait,
that. That's
and I
amazing.
will find it.
This
So I have my statistics file, my statistic doc.
Because for all of us who are super geeky and like the numbers, this is great. And that you have it so accessible. That's amazing.
So this is my monthly statistics, and what I can see here that at the moment we have 42 cases in current litigation, that we provided we provide from 50 to 93 legal consultations per month.
Wow.
Not consultations, new people who come for consultation.
Right, right.
Because, of course, this is not one consultation, it's
right.
the whole story. And what else do we have here in my statistic? I'll tell you. But about half of them they are about possibility to leave Russia, to get an asylum, etc. I provide from 3 to 7, yes, consultations to grassroots initiatives, LGBTQ plus initiatives, or LGBTQ plus friend initiatives about how can they proceed with providing the services or something else, or yes, the services, maybe social services or commercial services to LGBTQ plus people without being prosecuted for extremism. And so this is an effect of multiplication, of course. And we provide about 2 times per month the offline support of the offline LGBTQ plus events, which are absolutely, totally, plainly illegal in Russia.
Yes.
So those are activities where the people, so we elaborate the special, the security protocols for each event. What it is, how to share the information about it, how to what to write in this information, how to provide the real information and still be safe, even if there is an police agent inside, and etc., etc. And we provide the lawyer for all this stuff. So it's about 2, maybe 3 times per month. But now it's December, and now it becomes hot because of the New Year gatherings.
Yes, yes. Thank you so, so much for clarifying all that and really emphasizing the important risk. Other questions, because I know I could talk about this forever. Georgie.
Yes, I just actually not as much as a question as just appreciation for Ksenia and you, Tiffany. One thing I wanted to say is uh, this is by far my favorite talk, although the previous ones were great, because Ksenia, what you were just saying makes a lot of sense to me. One thing is that you are speaking about how USAID was providing a lot of legitimacy and kind of feeling that we're not alone in it, right? And something that I see is happening is now over the past 2 years, we did this big effort to make sure that people across the globe, people like you and I, not some big like diplomats or not some big politicians, but actual people who live their everyday lives across the world, would somehow understand and support our work. And then how it trickles down. And then you don't just help people in courts, but also you start helping like other organizations. And then this way we keep up the legitimacy, although there is no big player behind us like that before. And so that is just beautiful. And again, that's the soul of my work. So Ksenia, you were saying makes a lot of sense to me, and I wanted just to thank you again.
Well, this legitimacy effect is very important. For example, for me personally, when the war in 2022 began, and I, as other people who lived in Russia at that time and were connected with human rights work, I was very surprised because I faced some, pressure and hostility from people from democratic regimes because that was about all the Russians like the aggressors, etc. And that was for me like if Russia is against me and those guys who should be my allies, they're also against me. So where am I? Who am I? Why am I bad for everybody? Don't understand it. So when I see this support, the international support, it's very important in by the existential meaning. So I still understand. It allows me to understand that what I'm doing is the right thing. So very easy. I spoke a lot, but at last I said a very, very easy thing.
Thank you so, so much. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, Ksenia, thank you so, so much for this beautiful presentation and all the very, very important work that you're doing because it's obviously so needed and so, so risky and so, so dangerous. And you're still out there. And this is why we need to have that financial support so that those professionals like you who are risking their lives are still able to provide the necessary human rights work that is needed. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing and all your colleagues. Thank you.
So thank you for calling me to this
Wonderful.
venue.
Thank you.